Hello, guys and gals, and welcome to another episode of Unique Items. Today, we're going to be looking at a interesting piece of equipment that I still dearly not quite sure how to properly take advantage of. It's called the Scoundrel's Leathers. This is the new version of 1.50 that they've updated all these uniques. So it's definitely changed from the previous version. First off, it has a maximum life on there of 957 to 1,259, which is higher than the 873 they normally put on equipment. On top of this, we also have a 26 to 35% movement speed while the inner sight gauge is full. And on top of this, we also have a 45% increase, or up to a 45% increase, to the inner sight duration. And there is also a up to 15% damage reduction from enemies affected by trap skills. Now, I don't particularly like damage reduction with a damage reduction on Tuesdays because it doesn't really work as effectively. There's like loopholes where the monsters can still hit you for full health, and on top of that, if they're not currently affected by your traps, they're going to hit you for full damage anyway. And I like raw damage reduction a lot better than I like damage reduction on Tuesdays. On top of this, we also have the unique effect. Now, the unique effect on this particular piece of equipment is while you have unlimited energy from the inner sight, casting a core skill has a 80%, up to an 80% chance to spawn a caltrops, poison trap, or death trap rogue only. Now, this inner sight is specifically something that you have to choose. So attack enemies to fill your inner sight gauge, marked enemies fill it faster. When full, gain unlimited energy, a 25% critical strike chance for 4 seconds. So to utilize this, you're going to have actually have the inner sight ability on. On top of this, once you have inner sight ability on, it's still not going to work because you have to fill the inner sight gauge, which is down here. So inner sight, attacking marked enemies to fill up the gauge when it is full, gain unlimited energy for a duration. So in this particular case, I'm going to attack this monster here because he's now marked. And as you can see, I'm now getting traps. Now, you could potentially combine this with other traps, or other items, like, for instance, the Eyes in the Dark Pants, which I just did a video on. And if you were to use the Eyes in the Dark Pants here, you're going to gain an additional activation on Death Trap, and let's see if that actually works with this. Seemed like it did. Yes. So you can get an extra activation for your death trap there with this. So basically what you're going to be doing is you're going to be spamming a core skill with this particular ability. And obviously spamming your core skills is going to give you more of these traps, which makes it a little bit easier to use the traps than actually activating them yourself. Of course, you could still activate them yourself. You can see that they don't actually need to be on your bar because I'm getting poison traps and cal traps, whether I have them on my bar or not. And this means that you could potentially be setting up a build where you're spamming traps on the regular basis without actually having any of them on your bar. And I'm not even sure you need Death Trap on your bar. Let's take Death Trap off because I'm not actually using Death Trap in this build. I was actually only had that there because I'm doing videos. So let's try this again with without the Death Trap on our bar. Make sure the Death Trap is also spawning. So yes, the Death Trap will spawn even without it being on our bar. And obviously, as you can see, we can get the Poison Trap too, which is actually a pretty intriguing way to perhaps stack even more poison damage on a target than you would normally. And of course, Poison Trap has some interesting things like dealing increased poison damage to enemies standing inside your Poison Trap, which could potentially be useful if you're trying to set up a very nice poison build. Let's play around with this for just a second, and let me pull a couple points from... let's pull it from Aftermath for the moment. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to put points into Subverting Trap. So we're just going to try and cap this out real quick. It's not really going to be too big of a deal. We'll just throw some points in there for the moment. none of this stuff is super important at this particular time. Alright, so now we're going to see how high we can scale our poison damage, because why not? So let's just go ahead and scale. We're going to scale, 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 scale. Let's get our poison damage as high as we possibly can. And what are we at? Like 20 million? It was like 20 million there for a second. So as you can see, the poison traps are definitely adding some poison damage to the total. I don't know exactly how much, but it's something. One of the issues, though, that I have with this is that everything's different elements. And this is one of the problems that I just have with the traps in general, is that Death Trap is shadow, Poison Trap is poison, and Caltrops is physical. So depending on what you're scaling, like if you're scaling poison imbuement, well, then the poison trap is nice. If you're scaling shadow imbuement, then the shadow trap is nice. Maybe you're scaling both, so that could be interesting. But like, in general, you're not ever going to be able to really scale all of them, because Caltrops is physical, and that's going to be kind of left out. Or if you're scaling just poison, then the other two are going to get left out. Or if you're scaling just shadow, for instance, then the other two are going to get left out. It's definitely an interesting way to get some pretty crazy traps, though, just like spread out all over the battlefield. And on top of that, there's also some other ways that you can enhance your damage through the traps. Like, for instance, enemies in Caltrops take 10% increased damage. So if you had that, that would definitely help out. You can also have it so that it's chilling enemies for the Caltrops, or you can have it so that it gives you increased critical strike chance. There's definitely a lot of ways that you could potentially use this to your advantage. And the new version of this item, honestly, is pretty neat. Depending on the core skill that you're using, of course, and it definitely helps to have a Ring of Star Skies so that you can spam your core skill as fast as you possibly can, you know, without having to worry about energy. Because although Inner Sight gives you energy, don't get me wrong, another problem with it is, though, is that when it's non-active, you still have to spam your core skill enough to activate the ability, right? So, and that's going to be one of the things. It looks like my poison damage is activating the ability. That's kind of crazy. It's pretty neat. All in all, I do think that they've definitely come a long way from the original versions that they created. And if you are trying to make an interesting, like Poison, Death, or Caltrop build, this could definitely be a way that you could potentially utilize this to your advantage, getting the free casting of a whole bunch of your traps. Because God knows, putting down the traps yourself is a pain in the butt in this game. And yes, you can put down the traps yourself, but I don't know. Is it good enough to make you relinquish your death grip on the beautiful, beautiful Tyrael's Might? I really don't know. The damage reduction that it offers is nowhere near as good as the damage reduction on Tyrael's. Although it does offer a little bit of life, its main benefits revolve around keeping Inner Sight Gauge permanently active. There are some benefits to having it active. Like, for instance, if you are utilizing the Prime Death Trap, it will pull targets into it, which is definitely nice. If an enemy kills if you kill an enemy with the Death Trap within 12 seconds, you could potentially reset the cooldown on it and be able to plink down your own Death Trap within a faster rate. The Poison Trap, of course, has the ability to knock down enemies when it activates, and on top of that, it can also enhance your overall poison damage if you're going for a poison imbuement setup, or maybe using like the Andariel's Visage setup. So it could be a way that you could add additional damage to your setup, which is kind of interesting. Caltrops does give you additional damage bonus as well, and it gives you additional critical strike chance, so that's not exactly terrible either, and it can be used to chill targets. So there are definitely some ways that you could potentially use this to your advantage and get like a nice bonus, but you're definitely going to have to find another way to make your character tanky, and not exactly sure how you're going to do that, because if you're doing it with a poison build, you're probably going to be using Andariel's because it's got amazing poison damage. So you're a guy, you're like two of your main defensive slots are now like hogged up with other pieces of equipment, and there's not a lot of defensive, status that you can get from other things. I will say that I do like the automatic creation of the traps. In my previous video, when I was talking about Eyes in the Dark, one of the things that I complained about was how static the traps are, and, you know, like how they don't really follow you around. And this is one way that you can potentially make it so that the traps, while they're not really following you around, you have the ability to just kind of randomly spawn the traps on the monsters as you're attacking, which isn't certainly a bad thing. Let's read the flavor text on this, and the flavor text is, rumor has it he lost them in a game of Skull and Anchor, but the boss is a devil with the dice. I think he wanted to give the poor sod something to keep him warm without wounding his pride. L. Steer. Scoundrel's Leathers. I imagine if you did find a good pair of these with greater affixes on several of these, they could definitely be an absolutely amazing piece of kit. I mean, increasing the inner sight duration, obviously, also the movement speed while inner sight is active, the damage reduction, the life, the whole 9 yards. A 4 greater affix version of these could be very fun, as long as it has the 80% chance to spawn the Caltrops, Poison Trap, and Death Trap. The only downside to the fact that it spawns all the traps is that you can't really control which traps you're getting. Anyway, as always, I do appreciate you guys and gals joining me for these videos. If you want to know where to find these items, if you check out Diablo4.life, you can pull up any of this stuff with the unique target farming tool, and you can just simply click on Rogue. You could go to the Scoundrel's Leathers, and it's going to tell you that it drops from Duriel, Maggot King, and Endariel, Maiden of Anguish. That's where you can target farm it at.
Mr. Goody Two Shoes, Mr. Goody Two Shoes. Ginger Evil Mentor here. Why bother farming when you can go to MMOEXP.com and simply purchase your items in gold? GGM would have you farm the items. What a pathetic being. Use code GEM Ginger Evil Mentor for 6% off your entire purchase. And don't tell Ginger Gaming Mentor that I was here.
Honestly, there's a lot of people doing Andariels these days for the, you know, the Uber Uniques, or Mythic Uniques, rather. And so, you know, there's probably a lot of these floating around. You can probably also buy them these days on the Diablo4.trade, Diablo4 trade websites. And I don't mean buy them for money. I mean buy them for gold. There's a lot of trading going on in Diablo 4 now that they opened up the game. And people are having fun with it. So if you do, you know, get a hankering for maybe trying to build an interesting trap build, well, you take a look on there and see if anybody's got like a really nice set of Scoundrel's Leathers, and maybe start working on a build. Anyway, as always, I do appreciate you guys and gals watching my videos. Be sure to hit that like button and the subscribe button. And as always, keep watching.